thought we'd talk a little bit about Japhy Ryder. He's a character in the book The Dharma Bums, which I've recommended to a lot of people. Basically, he lives this happy life. He's a very not aspiring, but a character who can be aspired to. An ideal, a kind of epitome of a human, in my eyes, at least. And so I thought I'd discern his kind of life philosophy in some sort of a practical and actionable attempt to help some of you guys live this kind of life that Japhy does, and certainly is something that I am trying to do more and more in my life. And the first thing and the core principle, I think, of Japhy's philosophy is a principle of minimalism, or maybe essentialism more specifically. It's this idea that's been kind of told in a lot of philosophies, inside of Buddhism, inside of Stoicism, inside of even modern films and books like Fight Club, for example. That is, the more things that you own, the more complicated your life becomes. The more clothes you have, the more food you have to choose between, the bigger the house you own, the more impressive the car, the more complicated life gets. It's this idea of being happy with less things, of being happy with just the essential amount, and in a way finding pleasure in the simplicity of those things. It's quite a hard philosophy to capture and to pursue, but it is a very important one. I've noticed it myself, actually, in that the more simpler times of my life, the times when things have a more simple routine, are the times when I'm happiest. The times when perhaps I'm eating simpler food, just rice and mincemeat, things like that, like a very simple meal. The times when I'm eating my sardines, taking showers in cold water, going on walks, and not going out every night and drinking and spending money, are the times when I'm happiest. Ironically, the less money that I spend, the happier I seem to be. The same with shopping from thrift stores or buying clothes that perhaps aren't brand new or fancy. The happier I seem to be. It's this idea that the less you have, the happier you become. And it's a powerful idea, and one that I think you can very actionably incorporate into your life by various practices. And the one that I like to do is just asking yourself, like, do you need that thing? It's hard to kind of explain how you incorporate this into your life necessarily, but you need to incorporate some form of minimalism or essentialism into your life, of looking at the things that you own and asking yourself honestly, do I need that thing? Or perhaps when you next go and buy something, do I really need that thing? Or even more profoundly, just saying, where can I simplify? Where can I reduce my existence? Where can I eat simpler foods? Where can I wear simpler clothes? Where can I do simpler things? It's a kind of cutting down everything in your life except the bare necessities that you need to exist. And from that you can find true pleasure. It's an idea that basically goes back to maintenance. It's about where can you be consistently happy? Because say, for example, you have all these great things, these nice clothes, this fancy car, this huge house, then you've set yourself a high bar to maintain. And happiness, in a way, becomes this kind of fragile thing, because any tiny thing that goes wrong inside of that existence can ruin your desires, because you've become used to that baseline of existence. If you drop that baseline line to something that's still completely comfortable, but in a way easier to maintain, you can retain that level of happiness. I guess in a way it more so speaks to live within your means, kind of. But for example, now I've moved to Australia. I live in a house that by no means is nice. It's got 2 rooms essentially, and it's not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but in a way, this simple existence, I feel better now than I ever have before. The food that I eat is simpler, it's clean and whole foods, 3 ingredients, 4 ingredients, whatever. I go on walks and I meditate and I write and I read, and everything I get pleasure from is very easy to do. There's no instance where I won't be able to read my book, or I won't be able to just sit down at peace and meditate. Whereas before, my existence was attached to these very difficult goals, things like monetary success or fame, but even less profoundly, things like drinking or smoking or doing drugs. They were attached to these things to maintain that level of happiness. But now that I've removed a lot of that, I'm starting to feel a lot better. Anyway, next, what else does Japhy do? I mean, a big part of his character is his studying, and is this pursuit of knowledge. He's constantly learning things. He's constantly reading these books on Buddhism and on spirituality, and it's this idea that, and it doesn't have to be Buddhism or spirituality, but it's this idea that you need to be learning something. So for me at the moment, that's psychology. I'm planning on going back to university. I'm reading psychology textbooks and watching lectures and things like that. And basically it's that you need some higher pursuit to be learning. Something to get your teeth into that's bettering you as a human. Something that you're putting into. And if you're at school, then perfect. Try harder at school. If you're at university, devote yourself further to your studies. But it's this idea that a man needs that. It's the romanticized ideal of sitting down on the floor inside of your room with a candle on late at night, reading through textbooks and books and just having that kind of mystical silence in your life where you're fully engrossed in this thing that you're learning, this flow state that you're in. And kind of linked to that as well is Japhy's purpose, his creation. He creates things. He consumes a lot of knowledge, but he also puts things back out into the world. And that's another very important thing that a human needs. And for me, it's maybe these videos, or I'm writing a book at the moment, but a human needs something that they're outpouring into this world. And for you, that might be video, it might be writing, it might be music, whatever it may be, you need to have something that you're putting back out into existence. And it doesn't necessarily need to be something that's paying your bills or that's getting you a lot of money. I mean, these videos get like 10 views if I'm lucky these days. But it's this idea that you need to have something that you're putting out into the world and how important that is. So that's the third kind of pillar of Japhy's existence. And then the fourth, I'd say, is a connection to nature. And this is one I want to work on more myself in my own life, but it's this idea that really we come from nature, we're humans, we're animals, and we should at times return to that. There's this great passage in the Dharma Bums where they climb up Mount Matterhorn, somewhere in the Rockies in America, and they walk up the big hill and they tell stories of how beautiful it is up there. It's quite funny in a way as well, the way they tell it, but they meditate at the top of this hill surrounded by nature, completely silent, in this kind of Buddhahood, this void of existence where everything is completely and entirely present. And it's beautiful. The storytelling is beautiful, but more importantly, just the idea of nature is beautiful. So I urge you to try and get out into it a bit. Maybe you've got a park near you even, or there's a walk that you can go on just a short train away, but maybe the next weekend you have free, go and do a long walk in a park or up a hill or a mountain or something like that. Just go and do something in the wilderness, inside of this nature. So far, those are the ideas that we have. We have Japhy's essentialism, his learning, his purpose and what he's putting out into the world, and his nature. And then fifth, and I think most importantly, you have this idea of Buddhism. And it's a hard one to distill, but I think it's very important inside of Japhy's life, is this idea that, and I mean, we can talk about Buddhism for a long time here, and maybe we should make a video on it one day, and let me know if you'd like to see something like that, but it's this idea of life as suffering, and the attempt to get out of that. It's the idea that living is pain in many ways. There is a lot of suffering inside of a lot of things, but that our goal, more so than anything, should be this pursuit of happiness and ecstasy. And not necessarily through drink and things like that, but this pursuit of this higher existence where we're happy and free and alive. And he embodies that. And he lives very happily. You see him in the book. He's running around talking to strangers, waving and shouting hello at random people on the streets. But it's a beautiful way of living. By the way, this character isn't fictional. He's based on the real-life character Gary Snyder, who's a poet who's still writing today, but Jack Kerouac tells the story of him. But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting idea that we should have this kind of higher philosophy, something to attain towards, some sort of framework for happiness. And for him, it's Buddhism, and maybe for you it's a different religion, but for me, definitely Buddhism speaks to me. This idea of compassion, this idea of love. That's another big part of Japhy's character, is giving. is going up to Kerouac and saying, here, thank you, have these beads. And Kerouac says, oh, but what? And Japhy says, yeah, I have two, man, just take them. It's this idea of just giving, of giving the things that you have, even if you don't have a lot, of giving your time, your service, your possessions. A very Buddhist idea, a fundamental Buddhist concept. So that is basically the 5 kind of pillars of Japhy's existence, and I think a good framework for a life, or at least, certain things that you should incorporate into your life. Of course, we have the 6 pillars that we've spoken about so many times, but this is an extra set of not necessarily pillars. These aren't habits that you should do every day, but more so frameworks that you should live your life by. It's very important. So yeah, try and incorporate those into your life. Anyway, if you gained any value from that video, drop a subscribe and come chat to me on the Discord or give me a call. I'm so proud of you, brother. Manifest excellence, and I'll see you tomorrow.